Imagine an early morning with the mist still hanging in the air, birds chirping, and instead of a loud bang, what you hear is a slug or an arrow slicing through almost silently. That's the promise of the airgun world. Raw power without the trade-off of noise, smoke, or heavy recoil. They're becoming popular because they're quiet, have very little kick, are easy to fine-tune, and are incredibly versatile. You can shoot slugs, launch arrows, swap barrels, or adjust power levels all on the same platform. And at the same time, they push shooters to focus more on skill, ethics, and making the shot count. In this lineup, we're going to break each model down, how strong it really is, who it's best for, and how to use it responsibly. And if you're curious, just keep going. One, AirForce Texan LSS. When you need a sky-sized punch, open the scene with the breeze through the grass, the camera lingering on that matte black rifle, and the long Lothar Walther barrel giving off a kind of quiet craftsmanship. The Texan isn't a showy tech toy, it's a statement of stripped-down power. The LSS version with a carbon fiber bottle, the CF series, brings an unusual combo, a large reservoir. The maker lists about 490 cubic centimeters, charged up to 250 bar, about 3,625 pounds per square inch, letting the rifle reach energy levels many call unreal for a PCP. In 50 caliber and the CF configuration, the manufacturer quotes muzzle energy above 800 foot-pounds, and real-world chrono data shows slugs around 620 grains, leaving the muzzle at roughly 620 feet per second, which comes out to about 800 foot-pounds, with 3 to 4 high-power shots per fill. That 34-inch barrel from Lothar Walther brings sight radius and stable ballistics, while the TX2 valve and the integrated sound suppressing system, LSS stands for Low Sound System, make this monster noticeably quieter than traditional big bores while still holding on to the punch. Other specs you should know: a 34-inch barrel, single-shot side lever action that's easy to operate, a 2-stage adjustable trigger, an 11mm rail, and Ossi-Warstarsiers Picatinny for optics. Overall weight around 6 to 9 pounds depending on configuration, and available calibers that include .257, .308, .357, .457, and .50. Price checks on maker sites and dealers show starting figures in the ballpark of $1,200 to $1,500 for the LSS CF models. Some common listings start around $1,259 to $1,413 depending on variant and bundle. On the shooting side, you'll hear the soft breath of the carbon bottle more than a crack. The shoulder and body feel almost free of the heavy recoil you get with powder firearms. And that's a big advantage when you hunt in places where you want minimal disturbance. A good trigger and the Lothar Walther tube let you stack shots with impressive stability and grouping, so even when you fire very heavy slugs, your practical hunting range accuracy stays very reasonable. In terms of ergonomics, the Texan LSS is fairly user-friendly. The side lever doesn't demand brute force. The adjustable trigger and power settings let you tune for different slugs, and the spin lock/carbon tank system lets you swap or remove the bottle for carry. All of that turns the Texan from a range toy into a true hunting tool. Nothing's perfect, of course. The first downside is size and logistics. A powerful Texan needs an HPA fill source, a compressor, an SCBA bottle, or a dedicated hand pump, and the accessories can add cost fast. The rifle is heavier and longer than most compact air rifles, so packing it through rough country needs planning. Even with the LSS suppression, the report is in the medium-high range compared to typical air guns. Don't expect absolute silence. Also, the upfront cost for the CF model plus accessories, spare bottle, charging kit, optics, will usually push you beyond the advertised price. But that's the trade for having 600 to 800 foot-pounds in your hands. If you neglect maintenance, those high-pressure parts in the TX2 valve need periodic care. Replacing a carbon bottle or repairing valves will be pricier than similar work on a powder firearm. If your goal is a practical big-bore platform that can put heavy slugs downrange with repeatable accuracy across a few shots, the AirForce Texan LSS CF series is one of the top choices today. It's not cheap or light, but in return, you get power and precision in the palm of your hand. With starting prices roughly between $1,200 and $1,500 US, depending on model and package, plus the extra cost for charging gear and optics, this is an investment for the serious hunter or the big bore enthusiast who wants maximum performance. 2. Umarex AirJavelin Pro. When an arrow meets pressure, open with the sleeve rolled up, a carbon arrow slid into the breech, the narrator's eye gliding over the slim, flat, dark earth frame before the trigger is squeezed. The AirJavelin Pro doesn't try to dazzle you with big headline numbers. It surprises by packing everything you need for a practical airbow into a compact, easy-to-carry, easy-to-handle package. At its core, this is a PCP airbow, an integrated reservoir of 7.4 cubic inches, about 121 cubic centimeters, that can be charged to 4,500 pounds per square inch, but is regulated down to 1,500 pounds per square inch by an internal regulator. The result is a stable string of shots of about 25 rounds at usable speed and energy, with roughly the first 15 shots holding full and consistent power thanks to that regulator. It's a bolt-action, single-shot design that uses Umarex straight flight arrows weighing about 170 to 176 grain and can reach muzzle velocities up to around 370 feet per second, which translates to about 52 foot-pounds of energy. Enough to put it in the mid-size hunting tool category for airbows today. The overall length is adjustable to fit different shooters. The weight sits under 5 pounds, so you won't tire after a few sessions. And a full Picatinny rail plus M-lock slots on the sides make mounting an optic, a quiver, or other accessories quick and straightforward. On the shooting feel and real-world use, the AirJavelin Pro gives a very friendly experience. Report is low, recoil is essentially zero compared to powder firearms, and the process of bringing an arrow to point feels like operating a firearm. You cock, aim, and release. With about 15 full-power shots, you've got enough confidence for a short woods hunt, or for taking care of pest animals without lugging a huge compressor. The flat, dark earth finish looks tidy. The textured grip surfaces help when hands are wet. And the package usually ships with 3 carbon arrows, which helps beginners who don't want to scramble for compatible arrows right away. Retail pricing is competitive, generally in the low hundreds of US, with manufacturers' suggested retail prices often around $300 US and actual street prices varying around that depending on promotions, making it a much lower entry cost than larger dedicated airbows while still delivering practical terminal performance. Of course, every advantage comes with trade-offs. The clearest downside of the AirJavelin Pro is its single-shot nature. You have to manually reload an arrow after every shot, which slows the cadence compared with magazine-fed or multi-shot platforms. For shooters used to rapid follow-up, that can be annoying. Also, the small integrated PCP bottle, while convenient, means you're dependent on a high-pressure charging source to refill when it's empty. A hand pump or HPA compressor is mandatory if you plan to use it far from a power source, and carrying those items eats into the lightweight benefit. Finally, although 370 feet per second with a 170 grain arrow produces respectable energy, penetration and terminal effectiveness still depend heavily on the arrow and broadhead you choose. Users need to select the right arrow and broadhead in practice to ensure ethical, lethal hits when hunting. In short, the AirJavelin Pro is a smart step for anyone wanting to try hunting with an airbow without investing in bulky, expensive systems. It hits the balance between portability, ease of use, and enough energy to get the job done, at a much friendlier entry price than full-sized airbows. If you're after a quiet way to approach stealthy hunting, or a lower noise pest control option, the AirJavelin Pro promises solid arrow power, repeatable performance on the early shots, and a compact frame you can carry all day in the woods. 3. Tradition's Crackshot XBR. The two-faced gun for family use and tinkerers, open with morning sun on the porch, a kid and their dad both holding the same lightweight rifle, the dad swapping on a .22 barrel to teach shooting, then cutting to the forearm area as the XBR upper is fitted, and suddenly you've got an arrow launcher. The Crackshot XBR doesn't try to be the forest's biggest bruiser. Instead, it cleverly puts versatility in the shooter's hands with a friendly, approachable vibe that sometimes makes you smile at how simple and effective the two-in-one idea is. In terms of specs, the standard version comes with a .22 LR ammunition package and a short barrel of about 16.5 inches, while the XBR upper, the conversion for arrow launching, uses a roughly 20-inch barrel specifically designed for the Tradition's Firebolt, which are 16-inch aluminum arrows. The overall weight with the full kit usually sits just over 4 pounds, and the overall length when fully assembled is about 32 inches, making this one of the few guns you can carry through brush without tiring out your hunting buddy or the family learning to shoot. The manufacturer and field tests show arrow speeds up to about 385 feet per second, a figure that, with appropriate arrow tips, places it squarely in the practical range for small to medium game under many state laws. Retail pricing for a Crackshot XBR package typically falls in the few hundreds range, commonly around $500 to $650 US, depending on the bundle and dealer, which makes it a relatively cheap way to try an air-arrow hybrid without a big upfront investment. Handling and user experience are major pluses. Recoil is low, the report when launching an arrow is small compared to powder firearms. Barrel swaps are fairly straightforward, and the synthetic stock keeps shooting comfortable for all ages. The design includes a side-mounted quiver that holds 3 firebolts for quicker reloads, and many packages ship with a few arrows and an XBR power load tool, so new owners aren't hunting for compatible arrows straight out of the box. Accuracy at 22 ranges is naturally good, and the arrows in XBR configuration fly with a surprisingly consistent trajectory within typical bow ranges. That means new shooters can get practical results without a huge learning curve. But Crackshot XBR isn't without compromises. The biggest limit is the conversion design. Although the barrel swap is quick, you don't get rapid follow-up shots like a magazine-fed or multi-shot system. And switching between .22 and the XBR upper takes basic tools and time. The XBR uses a small power load charge to propel the arrow, so even though the noise is low, the manufacturer and many testers still recommend hearing protection when firing. Don't mistake lower report for completely silent. Also, while firebolt arrows can reach high speeds, terminal performance depends heavily on the arrow and broadhead you choose. To ethically harvest game, you need the right tip and solid practice to know your effective range. Finally, as a light single-shot platform, it won't satisfy folks who like to dump a few rapid shots downrange. Traditions. Crackshot XBR is an invitation to play seriously with the one platform, two purposes idea. It's great for beginners wanting to try air arrow shooting, for families looking for a fun and safe way to learn marksmanship together, or for hunters wanting a lightweight, low recoil option to experiment with new techniques. With a friendly price compared to purpose-built airbows and a simple creative design, Crackshot XBR delivers real fun and utility, so long as you accept some limits in rate of fire and continuous power. 4. Umarex Hammer Carbine. When power is squeezed into a compact frame, open with leaves rustling on a trail, the narrator setting the hammer carbine on their knee and running a finger along the mag pull stock before pulling the bolt, that split second tells you this isn't a toy. The hammer carbine was built from the idea of putting full-size big-bore performance into a handy carbine package, and surprisingly, it does that without losing the hunter's essentials. On paper, it's a bolt-action PCP big bore with a 2-round pressure seal magazine, a carbon fiber bottle roughly 35 cubic inches, about 350 cubic centimeters, and a shorter barrel than the full-length models. The overall length is around 34.125 inches with a barrel close to 23.25 inches, yet it can still push a 350 grain slug at about 820 feet per second, producing muzzle energy around 523 foot-pounds. Those numbers make the Hammer Carbine a seriously capable hunting tool for larger game when you place your shots ethically. The sealed magazine design is a nice touch. It reduces sideways gas blowback around the magazine well when you fire, so the shooter experiences a cleaner cycle with less surprise gas discharge during follow-ups. And thanks to the larger bottle, you typically get about 4 full-power shots per fill, enough for a lot of real-world hunting scenarios before you need to top up. Ergonomics and controls show Umarex was thinking about modern users. An AR-style mag pull stock gives a familiar hand position. The textured pistol grip helps in wet conditions. A rubber butt pad eases recoil control, and there's a Picatinny rail on top for optics. Weighing in at about 8.2 pounds, the Hammer Carbine isn't overly heavy, but has enough mass to stay steady when you're aiming. The trigger is tuned for a consistent pull, and the bolt plus 2-round magazine makes fast, accurate follow-up shots possible, something many hunters appreciate when they want a quick second shot on target. From a practical standpoint, the shortened barrel makes the rifle easier to carry through brush or climb with, while still delivering impactful shots when you place them on critical hits. Of course, advantages come with trade-offs. First, you still live by the PCP rules. You're dependent on a high-pressure fill source like an HPA compressor or a quality hand pump, and carrying that gear affects overall mobility compared to traditional powder firearms. Second, the Carbine's shorter barrel generally means you won't get quite the absolute top-end power of a full-size model. The Hammer Carbine balances portability and power, but the full-length variants still have headroom if you need every last bit of range and energy. Also, like other big-bore PCPs, accessory costs, extra bottles, spare magazines, maintenance, and the complexity of servicing valves and regulators are factors to include in your budget before buying. On price, Umarex positions the Hammer Carbine reasonably for the performance. Retail typically sits around $1,000 to $1,200 US, depending on dealer and package, which makes it an accessible option for hunters who want high performance without paying double for boutique models. In short, if you want a big bore platform you can carry all day that can deliver a handful of meaningful, high-power shots and still feels user-friendly, with a 2-round sealed magazine, the Umarex Hammer Carbine wears the heart of a full-size rifle in carbine clothing. Versatile enough for off-trail work, powerful enough for big game when you shoot well. 5. Benjamin Bulldog M357, the bullpup work dog that packs punch in a short package. Open with the soft hiss of the fill valve, as a technician hooks a Foster fill probe to the rifle, the Bulldog sitting on the mechanic's knee. Compact in bullpup form, but its voice isn't small. The Benjamin Bulldog M357 is a clear step forward in the big bore world. It combines a handy bullpup layout with a PCP, magazine-fed system so you get repeat shots from a short, practical chassis. On the spec side that matters, the standard .357 configuration uses a reservoir around 340 cubic centimeters, charged up to 3,000 pounds per square inch, and delivers a useful shot count per fill that typically falls in the range of 8 to 10 shots depending on setup, which sets the Bulldog apart from many single-shot big bores by giving you some follow-up capability in the field. The maker fits it with a quality rifle barrel, a shroud suppressor tube to tame noise compared with many other big bores, and a long Picatinny rail so you can mount day or night optics as needed. Weight and balance are sensible for a big bore bullpup, and many kits ship with a case and an optic, so the rifle is ready to go. On the shooting side, the Bulldog delivers reliability. You can load a 5-round self-indexing magazine, operate the side lever or bolt with light effort, and feel that each shot produces a trajectory and energy level suitable for medium game when placed correctly. Some manufacturer Magnum variants of the M3I57 advertise significantly higher muzzle energies, moving the Bulldog into a class that many call harvest-capable for larger game compared with older big bores. Because it uses a standard Foster fill fitting, you won't be stuck with odd proprietary probes. That's a real advantage if you need to top up from a spare bottle or a field compressor. Market price checks for the base models usually fall somewhere between $900 and $1,300 US, depending on variant, optic, or case bundles. and the seller, a price that makes the Bulldog attractive for hunters who want magazine-fed big-bore performance without paying boutique prices. But Bulldog isn't without trade-offs. First, like all big-bore PCPs, you're tied to a high-pressure fill source. Carrying a compressor or a hand pump increases your loadout. A 340 cubic centimeter bottle gives decent shot count. But if you're out for prolonged periods without a fill plan, you'll need to manage that carefully. Second, depending on the exact variant, the number of effective shots can drop off after a few full-power rounds. So gas management and selecting the right projectile are important to keep each shot capable of ethical harvest. The bullpup layout, while compact, can feel unfamiliar to shooters used to traditional layouts. Stock geometry and the way recoil transmits to the shooter's shoulder differ, and you'll likely want a few practice sessions to get comfortable. Lastly, if you chase extreme performance, for example magnum tunes that push muzzle energy toward the 2 to 300 foot-pound range, expect higher costs and more frequent maintenance, bigger bottles, spare magazines, and occasional valve tuning. In short, the Benjamin Bulldog M3587 answers the need for an all-around big bore. It doesn't try to be the loudest or the absolute most powerful, but it strikes a useful balance between repeatability, practical stopping power for hunting, and field practicality. If you want a big bore you can pick up and use right away, with quick reload capability and without massive size or price penalties, the Bulldog rightly deserves a spot on your shortlist. 6. AirSaber Elite X2. The thrum of a heavy carbon arrow. Picture a slow camera sweep over a pair of minimalist barrels, the carbon sheen catching light, then moving to a thick, hefty arrow set into the guide. When the trigger breaks, the whole scene seems to hold its breath before a razor-straight burst. The AirSaber Elite X2 isn't empty hype about numbers. It's a design statement. A double-barrel system optimized to launch large, heavy carbon arrows with energy enough for serious hunting. At the heart of it are manufacturer-designed arrows weighing 376 grain. When the reservoir is full and the system is tuned right, each arrow can leave the barrel at up to about 450 feet per second, putting muzzle energy into the upper 169 foot-pounds, a figure that places the AirSaber among hunting-capable tools in many jurisdictions, if local law allows. The integrated reservoir charges to roughly 3,625 pounds per square inch, and includes a Foster-style fill fitting so you can top up with an HPA compressor, a suitable hand pump, or an SCBA bottle. That gives you flexibility in the field. The maker claims roughly 25 shots at big game power per fill, and that total can rise to about 30 shots if you accept Predator-class targets or run lighter arrows, enough for a short hunt or an extended pest control session. Handling the AirSaber Elite X2 feels more like working with high-end gear than playing with a toy. The compact frame, low center of gravity, and solid feel when you cock a shot help keep you steady on target, while a Picatinny rail on top lets you mount optics suited to longest shots or low-power magnification for closer work. The double-barrel layout gives you 2 arrows ready to go, cutting downtime between shots compared with single-barrel airbows. The stock and hand placement are finished for comfortable, non-slip handling, and there's room to attach a quiver or other accessories. In terms of accuracy, the AirSaber shows excellent ballistic stability, with the 376 grain arrows making it a strong performer for mid-range shooting. Experienced shooters report convincing performance in field tests from about 30 to 70 yards when their aiming and technique are solid. As with any high-power platform, there are practical caveats. First, those heavy arrows demand careful maintenance, correct broadhead selection, and precise sighting to ensure ethical, lethal hits. The wrong broadhead or sloppy setup can result in wounding rather than a humane harvest. Second, although the claimed 25 shots per fill is attractive, real-world effective shot count can drop if you hammer the system at full power or operate in cold conditions that reduce gas performance. Managing your pressure curve and carrying a spare bottle is smart if you plan to stay out long. Also, even though the AirSaber controls report better than some big bores, it's not magically as quiet as a crossbow or powder firearm in all situations. Hearing protection and neighbor awareness remain part of responsible use. Finally, The cost of specialized arrows and PCP maintenance isn't trivial. Add up the rifle, quality carbon arrows, proper broadheads, charging gear, and optics, and you're looking at a meaningful total cost of ownership. On price, the AirSaber Elite X2 typically sits in the mid to high range among consumer airbows. Its retail positioning reflects the heavy arrow technology and integrated HPA system, an investment aimed at hunters who want repeatable, high-energy shots across many rounds while enjoying lower recoil and reduced report compared to powder firearms. In short, if you want a serious arrow launcher that repeats power reliably, is built for stable ballistics with heavy arrows, and delivers a refined handling experience for field use, the AirSaber Elite X2 is an attractive choice, provided you're prepared for the arrow-specific consumables and PCP logistics that come with that level of performance. 7. Benjamin Pioneer Airbow. The hunter's playground for those who like a challenge. Open with the sound of boots crunching on dry leaves, the narrator crouching to load a heavy carbon arrow into the groove, then looking back at the camera like, "See how different this is?" The Pioneer doesn't try to show off. It gives you an instant sense that this platform was built to change how you think about hunting with arrows. In a bullpup layout, the overall length drops to about 33 to 34 inches, making it far more maneuverable than a traditional crossbow when you're moving through thick brush or climbing a tree. At its core is a PCP system rated at 3,000 pounds per square inch with an integrated regulator, delivering a string of roughly 8 full-power shots. And the manufacturer's peak velocity claim sits at about 450 feet per second, with a standard arrow weighing around 375 grain, which translates to roughly 150 to 160 foot-pounds of energy, putting the Pioneer in the big game category where local law allows. Its front-pull firing design removes the archer's paradox you see on conventional bows, so the arrow flies straight and stabilizes immediately after leaving the barrel. Field tests commonly show 2-inch groups at 50 yards are achievable by a skilled shooter, a number that gets hunters' attention. The feel of working the Pioneer blends tech and hunting instinct. You close the breech in one smooth motion on top, aim down a long Picatinny rail, and squeeze the trigger much like a PCP rifle. A familiar workflow that helps shooters move from guns to airbows without too much fuss. Kits often include a quiver, a few 375 grain hand-fletched arrows, and a centerpoint 6x40 scope tuned for airbows with holdover marks out to 75 yards. That helps newcomers get up and running. Weatherproof finishes, the bullpup's compact center of gravity close to the shoulder. And the lack of traditional limbs mean less routine maintenance than some crossbows, so Pioneer appeals to shooters who want a ready-to-hunt tool without wrestling daily with string care. Retail pricing for a ready-to-hunt Pioneer 450 kit typically sits competitively versus higher-end crossbows. The ready-to-hunt bundles are usually more affordable than specialist systems, making Pioneer a reasonable gateway for hunters who want crossbow-level power in a shorter package. There are clear strengths: impressive arrow speed and energy for full-size arrows, repeatability of up to 8 full-power shots per fill, something mechanical crossbows can't match, accuracy thanks to the front pull system, and a free-floating barrel that reduces cant-induced error, and overall practicality from the compact bullpup form and included accessory packages. Those features make the Pioneer versatile, good for purposeful hunts, effective for pest control, and useful on farms where precision and stopping power matter. But Pioneer also brings real limitations you shouldn't ignore. Even without limbs, the PCP system requires HPA fills. Carrying a charging bottle or a hand pump if you're far from a fill station is mandatory. And that logistics load cuts into the simplicity advantage over a mechanical crossbow. The 8 full-power shots per fill are impressive, but if you run the system at maximum power a lot, or operate in cold conditions that reduce pressure, the number of effective shots narrows. So, pressure management and fill strategy are essential to keep every shot harvest capable. The 375 grain arrows deliver great performance, but demand the right broadhead, careful upkeep, and correct arrow spine and weight balance. A poor choice of broadhead or sloppy setup can turn a powerful hit into an unacceptably wounding strike. From a total cost perspective, Add arrows, quality broadheads, charging gear, and optics to the base price and the final ownership cost climbs. So, plan the budget accordingly. Benjamin Pioneer Airbow sits between PCP rifles and modern crossbows. It offers speed, power, and accuracy in a compact, easy-to-handle frame with a repeatable shot count useful in many hunting situations. If you like experimenting, want a new way to approach big targets with less report than powder firearms, and are ready to invest in the charging system and proper arrows, Pioneer is one of the sensible, attractive options on the market. 8. Seneca Dragon Claw. When classic looks meet modern speed, open with a slow camera roll along the polished wooden stock, light catching the hand-carved patterns on the receiver, then shift to the 3 blued barrels glinting. Dragon Claw shows up like a hunting work of art. This rifle doesn't only impress with style, it carries an ambition too, to pack big arrow performance into a repeatable, accurate, go-to design for longer shots. The standout is its ability to send appropriately sized 50 caliber arrows at astonishing speeds. In optimal conditions, a suitable arrow can leave the barrel at up to about 500 feet per second, giving you the energy and a flat trajectory that extend effective range beyond most comparable airbows. The dual-chamber design increases the number of shots between fills, while the feed and guidance system help arrows keep a straight, consistent path. Something experienced hunters appreciate when making quick, ethical decisions in the field. A single-piece wooden monocar stock with fine cheek piecework and polished receiver details makes the Dragon Claw feel like part tool, part collectible. You could hang it on the wall and still grab it when you need a proper, high-performance shot. Handling the Dragon Claw blends tradition and tech. Despite firing heavy arrows, the system operates smoothly. The trigger is tuned for a clean break. The top rail is wide enough for serious optics, and the layout helps reduce muzzle movement on the shot. One big plus is parts and ammo compatibility. The manufacturer focused on using standard arrow sizes, so you're not locked into some obscure, proprietary shaft. That makes sourcing replacements and accessories easier. The result is a platform that lets you take longer, more confident shots with high reliability, while still giving you the finesse to pick small targets or place hits on vital zones when it counts. But power brings responsibilities and a few practical trade-offs. First, the Dragon Claw is not light. Its solid construction and wood details mean you'll feel the weight on long treks, and carrying a charging bottle and kit adds to the load. Second, peak performance only shows up when the system is properly filled and maintained. That means investing in a good HPA fill system, doing regular checks on pressure seals, and sometimes replacing high-load components. Skipping this upkeep will shrink your effective shot count and consistency. Also, high arrow speed and big energy require the right broadhead choice and disciplined shot placement. You can't rely on raw power to compensate for poor technique. Cost is another consideration. A nicely finished Dragon Claw with quality accessories usually sits at the higher end of the big bore airgun market. And don't forget the expenses for good arrows, reliable filling gear, and a worthwhile optic. All told, the Seneca Dragon Claw is for the shooter who wants craftsmanship and performance in one package. If you want a big bore that looks like a classic and will still deliver hard, straight shots at ranges many airbows only dream about, and you're willing to accept the weight, maintenance, and price that come with that, Dragon Claw will reward you with powerful, accurate performance at distances others struggle to reach. It's not the choice for someone chasing minimalism, but for hunters who value both style and capability, it's an irresistible option. 9. Hatsan Harpoon. When speed meets brutality, open with a night scene, a dim lamp casting shadows, the harpoon resting on a rack, its hollow guide rod looking like the mouth of a small cannon. Then a rough hand seats an arrow, and the camera cuts to the shaft tearing through the dark. The harpoon doesn't hide its ambition. It's an arrow launcher built to send a commercial bolt 20 inches long, faster than almost any crossbow you've held. And to do it with energy that makes you sit up and take notice. In a bullpup layout, the Harpoon packs the whole PCP system into a compact frame with a reservoir of 500 cubic centimeters charged to about 250 bar. On a full fill, the manufacturer positions about 10 shots at optimal power, enough for a short hunt or a solid pest control session. In field tests, the Harpoon can push a suitably matched bolt to roughly 600 feet per second, producing muzzle energy in the range of 300 to 330 foot-pounds depending on bolt weight, numbers many hunters call game-changing because they expand the ethical shooting envelope and punch through more barriers than a lot of other airbow platforms. Handling the Harpoon blends industrial toughness with a combat-ready feel. The polymer frame is rugged, the pistol grip is comfortable, and the adjustable stock gets you into a solid shooting position fast. The side lever cocking is smooth, and the rail that combines Picatinny and 11mm dovetail lets you mount optics or scopes without fuss. Practical touches like a 2-bolt magazine, an adjustable cheek piece, and a high-low butt pad let you tune your setup. The hollow guide rod accepts standard 2219 sized bolts, so finding replacement bolts on the open market is easier than chasing a weird proprietary shaft. When you press the trigger, it feels like you've unleashed a compacted load of energy. The bolt rockets out straight and keeps a tight trajectory. For experienced shooters, dialing in, drop, and point of impact to get good groups at typical engagement distances becomes a practical skill rather than a guessing game. But Harpoon asks for more than enthusiasm. It also demands logistics. First, that 500 cubic centimeter bottle and the 250 bar fill pressure mean you need a reliable HPA charging source, a compressor, an SCBA bottle, or a proper hand pump. If you want to use it away from a shop, that gear adds weight and complexity compared with a simple mechanical crossbow. Second, while the Harpoon can reach top speeds in ideal conditions, accuracy often comes from running optimized fills rather than pure maximum pressure. Many tests show that full tilt charging doesn't always give the tightest groups, so you'll need to learn the pressure sweet spot for the bolts and weights you use. Third, safety and ethics matter. At energy figures in the hundreds of foot-pounds, an arrow is not just powerful, but truly dangerous if used on the wrong target or with poor technique. Picking the right broadhead, knowing your effective range, and practicing aim are non-negotiable. Finally, total ownership cost goes beyond the rifle itself. Add specialized bolts, quality broadheads, a charging system, and optics, and the real price can climb well above the base listing. On price, the Harpoon has historically shown up as relatively accessible for the power it delivers. Some listings and retailer info suggested a manufacturer's suggested retail price in the low to mid segments, while full bundles with bolts and optics or refurbished units appeared at very competitive price points. In short, if you want a bolt launcher that can change the game, pushing commercial bolts near 600 feet per second, with energy enough to handle large targets, and you're prepared to master the charging logistics and pick your kit carefully, the Hatsan Harpoon is a serious commitment. Speed, power, and practicality, balanced by the need for supply planning and shooter discipline. 10. FX Impact, the multi-tool of the PCP world. Open with the cold, blue light of dawn on the firing bench, a technician unclipping a carbon bottle from the stock, and the narrator whispering, "One rifle, a lot of faces." The FX Impact isn't a simple gun. It's a modular platform built so you can completely change its purpose and performance in a few steps. Most notable is the removable carbon bottle, about 480 cubic centimeters, charged to roughly 3,600 pounds per square inch, so you can carry a spare bottle and swap it in the field. That turns refill logistics into a tactical choice instead of a constant limitation. The action, side lever on many models, is widely praised as one of the smoothest and fastest available. The indexing magazines are rock-solid reliable, and overall the system makes target transitions and reloads feel nearly effortless. But the real magic is the swap barrel and probe system. One day you run a .22 caliber tube for rabbits and small pest work. Swap to a .25 tube for optimized slug performance. Then change to a .30 or a .357 barrel when you need predator or big game capability. All on the same chassis. That means you can build an ecosystem of spare barrels and magazines instead of buying multiple rifles. Performance-wise, the Impact balances accuracy, energy, and repeatability very well. The regulator is finely tunable, so you can stabilize a string of shots at the power level you want. High-quality barrels and an effective baffle shroud system keep report down and recoil manageable, and the bullpup layout keeps overall length sensible, even with longer barrels. Users report excellent group sizes at typical hunting distances when the setup is dialed in, and swapping magazines, probes, or bottles rarely costs you reliability. A big reason this model stands out compared with many single-purpose PCPs. Of course, those strengths come with trade-offs. First, the FX Impact isn't cheap. It's aimed at serious shooters and pros, and prices reflect that. If you start buying extra barrels, magazines, and accessories, the total cost can climb quickly, and a fully loaded kit can easily exceed the base rifle's price by a large margin. Second, modularity demands knowledge and organization. Changing barrels, tuning the regulator, and matching the right probe to the magazine and projectile all take time to learn. Newcomers should expect a learning curve before they see the platform's full potential. Third, the high-pressure bottle and many accessory parts mean maintenance matters. Check O-rings, valves, and regulators regularly, and budget for replacement parts and servicing. Finally, the freedom to configure can overwhelm. Some shooters prefer a simple, single-purpose rifle rather than juggling lots of options. In real use, if you travel through varied terrain, pursue different game species, or just want one system that can be customized to the day's job, Impact can be a very smart investment. Swap a barrel, change the magazine, clip on a spare bottle, and you're ready for a different task without buying another rifle. But if you value simplicity over flexibility, a specialist PCP may be a more economical, user-friendly choice. Pricing varies by model and package, with base models often starting in the low to mid-thousands of US dollars and full kits moving higher. So plan your accessory list and budget up front if you go down the modular route. 11. Umarex Gauntlet 2 SL, the practical hunter's brain. Open with the soft click of a bottle valve, a shooter checking the regulator before cycling the action, light catching the matte black body. You immediately get that the Gauntlet 2 SL isn't a showpiece, but a tool built to work reliably. The G2 version with the side lever brings together what Umarex learned from the original: a bottle-forward layout with regulation, the ability to accept higher fill pressures than earlier models, a sling-ready synthetic stock, and an integrated receiver with an 11mm Bulldog Picatinny mounting slot for a solid optic. In short, Gauntlet 2 SL is the good, useful, affordable PCP pre-charge pneumatic that many hunters and target shooters pick when they want magazine-fed performance without fuss. On the spec side, the Gauntlet 2 SL commonly ships with a rifled barrel close to 28 inches, a regulator to stabilize pressure to the valve, and multi-shot magazines, often a 7-shot capacity for many big-bore small to medium configurations. The side lever action gives a smooth cocking motion, magazine indexing is solid, and that combination delivers a repeatable string of shots with consistent performance, something predator hunters and practical shooters value. In real use, the Gauntlet 2 SL can reach energy levels near 100 to 110 foot-pounds in 30 caliber style configs, which is enough for predator work and many medium game scenarios when you place your shots well. Smaller calibers like .25 or .22 are naturally better suited to pest control and precision target work. Ergonomically, Gauntlet 2 SL blends practicality and value. You get a regulated PCP with magazine feeding and a side lever action, but you're not paying for boutique finish. Controls are straightforward, the polymer stock gives a secure grip, balance helps keep the rifle on target, and overall weight stays reasonable for climbing into a stand or hiking a tree line. The bottle-forward layout also simplifies field bottle changes and routine servicing, which many users find handy compared with more fiddly configurations. Of course, limitations exist. The simplifications mean some parts are polymer and standard fasteners rather than premium machined components. If you want a boutique feel or ultra-fancy finishes, Gauntlet won't satisfy that itch. Performance-wise, getting the best results often requires fiddling with the regulator and trying different projectiles to find the sweet spot that balances shot count and muzzle energy. That testing phase can take some time. And as with any PCP platform, you still face the logistics of refilling. Even with a bottle-forward layout, you'll want a hand pump or an HPA, high-pressure air source, for long trips away from a fill station. Price-wise, Umarex positions the Gauntlet 2 SL as a value-packed mid-range option. Entry pricing sits noticeably lower than high-end modular PCPs, while still offering regulator, magazine feeding, and a robust side lever action, essentially giving you many of the practical features hunters want without the premium price tag. When you budget, remember to add charging gear, a decent optic, spare magazines, and maintenance parts. Overall, Gauntlet 2 SL is a solid, workmanlike choice if you want a magazine-fed, regulated PCP that does the job reliably from the moment you take it out of the box. 12. Evanix REX-P, the compact powerhouse. Picture the scene opening not on a long rifle, but on what looks like an oversized pistol. The REX-P perched on a stump, its short barrel pointing forward, the hand grip thick and solid. In the world of PCPs, this little beast is unusual. It's a pistol platform chambered in big bore calibers like 35, 45, and even 50, giving hunters serious stopping power in a package that barely stretches past 2 feet. The design revolves around simplicity and raw force: a single-shot breech, a side-cocking lever, and a compact air cylinder of about 290 cubic centimeters, typically charged to around 250 bar. That's 3,625 pounds per square inch. Depending on caliber, it can push a 45 slug at over 600 feet per second, generating muzzle energies well above 130 foot-pounds, with the 50 caliber configuration reaching even higher, putting it in the conversation with larger carbines, except it's a pistol you can carry in a small pack. The feel of firing the REX-P is unlike most handguns. Recoil is more of a firm push than a snap. The muzzle blast is noticeable but not deafening, and the sheer weight of the slug leaving the barrel makes you respect the little frame in your hands. Practicality is mixed. On one hand, it's light, easy to carry, and quick to ready. On the other, it's a single shot with a limited shot count per fill, meaning careful planning and pressure management are key. Accuracy is surprisingly good within 50 yards when paired with optics on the top rail, but like all big bores, trajectory drops steeply after that. Retail pricing usually falls in the upper mid-range, around $700 to $900 depending on caliber and dealer, making it more affordable than many full rifles, though you'll still need to budget for optics, a fill system, and slugs. What the REX-P really offers is a niche: hunters and shooters who want legitimate big bore performance in the smallest, most portable PCP package available. It's not a do-everything rifle, but in its role, powerful, packable, and unique, it makes a strong case. Looking across all 12 of these platforms, a clear theme emerges. You don't always need brass cases and gunpowder to wield something truly lethal. From enormous rifles like the AirForce Texan LSS that can send half-inch slugs with jaw-dropping power, to arrow flingers like the AirSaber Elite X2 and Pioneer Airbow, and down to compact shockers like the Evanix REX-P. The range is wide, but the goal is the same: deliver reliable, effective energy with precision, and do it in ways that feel both modern and surprisingly practical. These weapons are gaining traction not only because they're quiet and often legal where traditional firearms aren't, but because they challenge shooters to think differently, about filling systems, about tuning regulators, about picking the right arrows or slugs, and about shot placement and responsibility. At the end of the day, the fascination with air-powered lethality isn't just about novelty. It's about unlocking a category of tools that make hunting, pest control, and even range practice more flexible, often more accessible, and undeniably exciting. If you've been curious about what lies beyond bullets, these 12 stand as proof that power and precision don't always need gunpowder to shine.